The Central Bank of Nigeria, in partnership with Women's World Banking, a global non-profit organization that promotes financial inclusion for women, hosted a stakeholders roundtable that explored making finance work for women in Nigeria. It brought together key players from government, financial groups, women advocacy groups, and corporations. The event featured presentation and group discussion on how gender financial inclusion can be scaled in the country. The Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Women Affairs, Director Risk Management, CBN, and executive members of the Women's World Banking Group speak further on the essence of the forum and the way forward for women financial inclusion in Nigeria.
Well, in CBN, we've been doing a number of things. I'm representing the Deputy Governor, Financial System Stability. We have a Financial Inclusion Secretariat within CBN, and that is really focused on financial inclusion. And within financial inclusion itself, because of our target, which is 80% financial inclusion by 2020, which is a national target, we've actually adopted and created certain interventions, which, for example, the MSDEF, the micro for medium small enterprises, that particular intervention, we've set aside 60% of it for women-owned businesses, to assist their businesses. And what we have seen in the deployment, when I spoke earlier in the DG speech, I quoted the fact that we've actually achieved so far, in terms of the number and spread that we've achieved, that is already at 60%. It's actually, we've got 60.03% women. So we're doing a number of things as well. And this forum today is very important because, as you can see, it's brought together stakeholders from the Ministry of Women's Affairs, from the World Banking, Women's Banking, from Bank of Industry. All the regulators are literally here. You've got academia, and it's basically to rub minds, because we just heard from EFINA, for example. EFINA said that where we have always thought that there was deep financial inclusion, that there's actually a broadening of the gap of inclusiveness between men and women. And it's particularly worse in the most included zones, like Southwest. They quoted a 52% gap. In the Southeast, Southeast is the next worst. So, what this is doing here, it's unpicking some of the issues and actually coming up with solutions. And we've seen technology can actually play a key role in that. So, we've been taking notes, we're having further discussions, because there are many other things that need to be done. We're not yet at the 80%, we're not yet at 60% inclusion. So there's so much more that needs to be done. And it's not only women, though. Women have been excluded and need to be included, but so do the youth, so do northern Nigeria, so do the SMEs. We see there's an exclusion there. And now we're learning that also in the South, that we took for granted, there's actually been a broadening of the gap. So there's so much work that needs to be done. And this forum is going to really come up with measures and solutions to help to drive this more aggressively.
This forum today has been, we're very glad to be part of it. And it's kind of, the presentations have given us a lot of things to think about, like when the Director of Risk Management of the Central Bank asked, or rather in the presentation, about having the gender gap in the Southwest being that high as well as in the Southeast. You can imagine in the Southwest, that seemed to be most inclusive, the gap is more than 50%. And then in the Southeast, where the women are supposed to be, very liberated, as 33%. But then again, on thinking about those figures more deeply, I would say that to a greater extent, those are the real figures, real indices, because regardless of whether it's in the rural area or in urban area, you find out that the average woman is intimidated in Nigeria by the men. Men haven't given us enough space, giving women enough space to operate. Okay, look at the political arena. Upon everything that happened, I think we have fewer women elected, or that went through the exercise positively, successfully this time. But then again, no hope is lost, because from my own perspective, I think there has to be massive sensitization activities. A lot of sensitization activities, a lot of concession given to women. Also, women should be encouraged to go to school, and education is important. We're not saying that women should be confrontational, to their spouses or confrontational to men. But then again, women should be able to know their rights and assert their rights. We're also teaching children to know their rights, based on the Child Rights Act. And with that, people will know some of the privileges, especially women will know some of the privileges. If we really mean to achieve that 80% inclusiveness, in financial services, because a lot of men don't even know all these things. A lot of these things are not known by women in the rural areas or even in various parts of the country. And that's made women not to access some of these privileges. Then again, we have to be more innovative. There's no reason why we haven't started using telephone banking. Yes. Now, in countries like Kenya, I don't know if you've heard about the M-Pesa. It works so well. So that people can access funds from anywhere.
Look, I think, there's a lot that we could do. And in my previous life, I've seen that there are approaches to improve women's financial inclusion that are not based on science and are not based on experience. So, we've seen things like in the credit card world, when institutions will put out exactly the same product but make it pink and cover it in flowers and think that that's a product for women. What we do at Women's World Banking is we use a science-based approach to identify the barriers that women face and how to overcome them. So specifically in Nigeria, we want to share those learnings, ally that with the data and the insights that are coming from the investigations and research that's specific to Nigeria, and really bring all the stakeholders together and have the type of conversations we're having today that will seed the right sorts of ideas. So really it's a beginning, it's a first step, get the right people around the table, create the seeds, make sure that everybody understands and knows that if you base your responses in the research and the science and a real understanding of the barriers that women face, you have a much higher chance of being successful with your output, and that's what we hope to do.
I think the key to women's financial inclusion in a country like Nigeria is to be able to take financial services to where the women are. And I mean that both in terms of geographically as well as where they are in terms of accessibility. So you need to understand what their capabilities are in terms of digital literacy, financial literacy, aptitude, and design products and services that directly address those.
And then when you look at the Just Cash example, we're looking at more of a telco-led driven financial service. We're in a country where it's more of the bank driving the process at the moment. So how can we see a good coordination between the banks and telcos to really deepen financial inclusion? We're seeing the opportunities that technology can bring in this regard.
Yeah, technology is an interesting challenge because it, as I mentioned, is an opportunity, but it's also a barrier, because many of the women who are underserved in our markets today have issues with digital literacy as well as access. Many just simply don't have a phone. But among those who do, there is an opportunity to deliver services in conjunction with financial capability training in a way that works within their abilities. So where you have different regulation and you aren't able necessarily to develop the kind of model that we spoke about as what we did in Pakistan, I think there are still opportunities to have strategic partnerships that provide the reach and access that traditional financial service providers may not have otherwise.
And finally, do you think the Payment Services Bank initiative, because you talked about Unilever, you talked about Jazz, so that PSB, can that really be a very key factor to driving, deepening, particularly the financial inclusion for the gender?
I think it potentially could be. As we're seeing not only in Nigeria but in other markets, that new financial services structures take some time to establish the model and to prove themselves and to figure out how exactly to work within the environment to make it enabling. I think there is certainly an opportunity to do so here. And if it does, I think that would be an amazing way to help drive some of the critical initiatives that the Central Bank of Nigeria has established in terms of their targets for financial inclusion and specifically within women's financial inclusion.
A major takeaway from the event is the need for more awareness on the importance of financial literacy and increased access to financial products and services for Nigerian women. This will go a long way in closing the gender gap as Nigeria seeks to achieve the 80% target by 2020.